Well, we are on the road in Richmond, Virginia, as part of our 100 Cities Silence Majority Election 2012 tour. As we broadcast in the state capital, Richmond, we turn now to a new law that could force many of Virginia's abortion clinics to shut down. Passed last month after a long fight against it, the so-called Targeted Regulation of Abortion Providers, or TRAP law, requires clinics that provide abortions to meet the same building standards as hospitals. This includes specific requirements for the width of hallways and doorways, the size of operating rooms, the numbers of parking spots, even the size of the janitor's closets and types of water fountains. Critics note that other outpatient clinics, such as those that perform plastic surgery, are not subject to the same requirements. They say the new rules are a thinly veiled attempt to limit access to abortion services because clinics unable to afford to overhaul their buildings would close down, as happened in other states with similar laws, such as Mississippi, Tennessee, and Louisiana. All this follows Virginia's passage of a law in March that forces women seeking abortions to have an ultrasound at least 24 hours beforehand. The original version of the law included a provision that mandated the insertion of a vaginal probe to conduct the ultrasound, but this was removed after critics dubbed it a form of state rape. Now the man leading the push for these new regulations, longtime Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli, has announced his plans to run for governor next year. His efforts helped launch a website called CoochWatch. And for more, we're joined right now by one of the site's co-founders, Shelley Abrams. She's also the director of the Capital Women's Health Clinic, which has obtained an emergency license to provide abortions for 2 years as it prepares to meet the state's new building requirements. Shelley Abrams, welcome to Democracy Now! It's good to be here in Richmond. Explain what has just taken place in the last few weeks.
Well, what's basically taken place is that the Attorney General has strong-armed the Board of Health, who was about to approve regulations that could possibly exempt existing clinics like mine who have been safely performing abortions, exempt us from having to adhere to architectural guidelines that are essentially inserted to shut us down. They are so costly and unnecessary. And Ken Cuccinelli, our Attorney General, threatened the board a couple of days before their vote that if they were to insert this grandfather clause that would allow us to continue without the architectural guidelines, that he would potentially refuse to represent them in any future legal cases that they might have related to being on the board. And this did, in fact, work. The board did not insert a grandfather clause, and clinics are now required in 2 years to completely change our physical facilities if we can afford to.
And you have to change them how?
Basically, we're going to have to knock down walls. We're going to have to insert very expensive sinks in certain locations. You know, things that just are really, really unnecessary considering how long we've been providing safe abortion access in Virginia.
I wanted to play a comment of Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli made in an interview with Pro-Life News earlier this year, in which he defended the TRAP laws.
8 years ago in Virginia, in 1984, the National Organization for Women and the Virginia Society for Human Life held a joint press conference. Wow. The only time that has ever happened in Virginia.
Can't even believe it. And
they held it because the same regulations or something like them that are now going to be put on abortion clinics were removed. And their basic complaint was, if you take off these basic safety and health standards, women are going to be treated terribly in these clinics. And sure enough, that came to be the case in some of those clinics, and that's what the regulations being put back in place will hopefully fix.
Shelley Abrams, your response.
My response is that the regulations surrounding abortion clinics that were passed last year had absolutely no precipitating events. They came out of nowhere. Abortion had been safely being provided in Virginia since Roe v. Wade. So the idea that this is about women's safety is a farce. Ken Cuccinelli has stated that he wants to see abortion basically disappear in Virginia. He's very, very upfront about that, and I appreciate it. I just wish he would stop couching his approval for regulations under the guise of caring about women, because he doesn't care about women.
You were arrested right here, right, in this building where we are?
I was arrested on the Capitol steps around the corner.
Explain what happened and when that was.
Well, it was on March 3rd, and a wonderful group here was holding a rally and a march. And at the end of the march, we all marched up to our Capitol steps and stood up and, wanted our voices to be heard. We were against the vaginal ultrasound bill. We were against the regulations around abortion facilities. And we sat down on our steps and were promptly arrested.
Explain the governor's stand on this.
Well, again, the governor is pretending like, yes, Governor Bob McDonnell is pretending that he cares about the women of Virginia. And so he is stating that the vaginal ultrasound bill was to inform women. And clearly, he has never been pregnant and never been in the position that a lot of women are when we find out we're pregnant and maybe don't want to be, because we're extremely informed and we spend a lot of time considering our decisions.
You know, it's interesting. This, I think, has clearly influenced national electoral politics as well, because Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell was one of the leading contenders to be vice presidential running mate of Mitt Romney, and he was the one who introduced Mitt Romney when he introduced Paul Ryan in Norfolk. But because of this transvaginal ultrasound issue, where it became so controversial around the country that he was requiring this, or he was pushing for this, it looks like Mitt Romney had to step back.
Well, I think what you saw in Virginia were finally the people standing up to their government when the government has gone too far. It was a beautiful grassroots movement where people came from across the state and stood on our Capitol grounds multiple times and stood up to our government and said, you may be in power, but we're not going to take this anymore. And really, that's why we created Cooch Watch, was to let them know that you may be in power now, but the people are watching you, and we're not going to stand for this kind of tyranny.
These trap laws that are being used here in Virginia, put them in a national perspective.
The trap laws, I have been told by legal experts across the country, are the worst in the entire country. The building requirements are the newest. They are created for new buildings, not existing buildings, and they are the strictest in the entire country.
And the effect on women, what these laws are not now having to do with women seeking abortion and reproductive health services.
Certainly. Like I said, we've been providing safe abortion care for many years in Virginia, but these new guidelines are going to cost so much money that I have friends across the state that have stated to me in private that they are not going to be able to afford to stay open. You're going to see access in Virginia tremendously reduced over the next 2 years if these are allowed to stand.
The architectural requirements, is this a new approach in other parts of the country as well?
Certainly this is a new approach. Virginia has taken the strongest approach and will probably be a guide for many other states who are trying to.
Are we going to see it with other outpatient procedures like plastic surgery as well? The government, it's interesting because you have the party of decreased government regulation pushing for massive regulation.
Certainly. Absolutely not. All the people who have lobbied for these regulations against us have been asked if they plan to lobby for plastic surgeons or doctors' offices like that, and they said no, their focus is solely on abortion. So this is a clear tactic, and it's spreading like wildfire across the country.
And the new ultrasound requirements?
The new ultrasound requirements, I and our facility are seeing fewer people coming in on time there later in the pregnancy because the 2 visits are very daunting.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being with us. As you heard this news of the Wichita clinic being reopened. That's Dr. George Tiller's clinic, who was gunned down by an anti-choice extremist when he was in church. Your thoughts today?
It warms my heart because Wichita has been without access for many years now.
Shelley Abrams, director of the Capital Women's Health Clinic, I want to thank you very much for being with us as we broadcast from the Capitol building here in Richmond, Virginia. We're broadcasting from the studios of WCVE. We're back in a minute.